You're listening to Under the Shell Podcast, the best in America.
Welcome to Under the Shell, presented by Inside the Black and Gold. I'm Brendan YSL.
Sam Jane.
And Michael Howes, and this week we are doing a Maryland women's basketball preview with an interview from the coach, future Hall of Famer Brenda Frese.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Sweet. So one thing you talked about today in the press conference is that exciting team, but got to make sure you stay healthy. When I look at the non-conference schedule, I think it's fair to say it's one of the easier non-conference schedules you've had while you've been here. You guys don't go on the road for about a month. Is that something that went into, just trying to keep the team healthy and, get connected early in the season?
Yeah, I think twofold. When you build these schedules a year out, I thought last year's schedule for us was too difficult, just given the slate of the conference race and just those games that you have in and night out. I think are take its toll on you. And we didn't get as much experience out of our bench and our young kids, throughout that. So it's always just, I think, evaluating and figuring out where you can, gain that experience in your non-conference, because we know what the conference is going to look like.
Speaking of that roster, made a couple big additions this offseason. We had one of them on the podcast, Alucci. In the preseason, in this open practice, I read she played a lot of point guard, which isn't something she did a ton of at Duke. Can you just tell us a little bit about your plans for her and for that position? Because obviously graduating Cheyenne and Sarah, you have an opening at that spot. What are your kind of plans for Alucci and your plans for the one this year?
Yeah, well, that was a surprise to me because she didn't play the one. So, definitely I think, she's a ball handler in the sense of like, we play fast and we let our players, more than just our point guard, bring the ball in our transition. But she is not a point guard. And although she's doing a great job, like distributing and run, playing her role, but she's an elite level, off the ball. We have three really talented point guards that between Leia, Addie, and Kendall that will all be running the point. And I like that all three are really different. And so depending on what we're going to need in each and every game is going to kind of, really make the ultimate decision of who plays where. Like I've said, I think two of them could be on the court at the same time as well, just because of what they bring to the table.
Speaking of Kendall, she's a player I think a lot of us were intrigued about last year. A Washington Post All-Met Player of the Year, came in, a lot of hype. She was hurt for most of the season. What have you kind of seen from her this offseason? And are you expecting her to play a big role in this rotation?
Yeah, I mean, she's got a year under her belt, so she's not that true freshman and having to kind of go through those growing pains. And so we're finally seeing a healthy Kendall Walker, which has been a long time coming. And the kid is a winner. I mean, she has a championship pedigree coming from St. John's and has always performed on the biggest stage. And he has done a really good job. I mean, obviously defensively is where she hangs her hat, but she's done a really good job of knowing when to score and knowing how to get us into an offense, and then playing hard on both ends of the floor.
As we continue to move through the roster a bit, I think the biggest surprise to me who jumped in the portal was Yarden Garzon, one of the best players in Indiana basketball history. I was personally very surprised to see her jump in the portal. What was your reaction when you saw that she was in the transfer portal, and then what was the process of getting her here to commit to Maryland?
She was always a player that was on my radar of just how talented of a player she is. I mean, obviously we got 3 years to be able to watch her, and was the all-time leading, 3-point shooter in Indiana's history. So she brings, for us, just that opportunity to, knock down shots and, be able to spread the floor, for us within our offense.
Before we get back to the show, here's a quick word from our sponsor. The Catalyst to the Game is brought to you by Catalyst Hot Dogs. Catalyst brought the Jersey Dog to the DMV, featuring premium dry-aged Black Angus all-beef hot dogs made in Maryland, served with handmade toppings, including hot onions, relish, and their signature Texas chili sauce. And don't miss their original garlic knot dogs. Catalyst always offers vegan dogs as well as gluten-free buns. Shout out gluten-free buns, because Catalyst has food for everyone. Find them in CQ Stadium in Section 14 and the Xfinity Center in Section 210. Tell the people a hot dog is a sandwich. All right, now here is more Under the Shell. And also, looking at the roster, brought in 3 players internationally. Was that something, that's something you've done a bit in the past, but what kind of led this offseason to want to pursue players outside of the country? And what are the biggest challenges with doing that and recruiting? I know language is obviously an issue, but what makes that harder?
We've always had a minimum of 2 international players. Like clearly this year we have 5, and we already had Issy that was from London, and then Yarden having that experience already, 3 years in the States. But times have changed. A lot of international players are now seeking out to come over here. So of course we're going to be open to that, and evaluate what's in the best decision for us as a team and as a program. And so, when Leia came into the fold, that was one that had senior national team experience, and just knowing that we are so young in that point guard position, we need to have some experience there to be able to navigate those waters. And then to be able to find those late ads with both Maria and Nicole in the post position, we felt really fortunate to be able to lean on our contacts to be able to kind of fill that void, because once we lost the size of Gracie Merkel, we knew we needed to we had all the right pieces on this roster, and so we knew we needed to add those post pieces into the fold, and we're really fortunate to be able to get those 2.
I know you brought up Gracie Merkel. That was a weird one, I think, for all of us to follow. You said today that you just kind of have to ask Gracie, but from your perspective, can you just kind of give us the timeline? Was committed there, so just had a change of heart and decided to go back. Did she end up giving you guys really a reason, or was it just kind of like, I'm going back to Penn State?
Yeah, I think the timing was unfortunate. We had the same thing happen to us a year ago, in the portal, although, she was much quicker, MIA, when she decided to go to Utah and take her commitment back. It was within the week. So timing is impactful. I mean, when you wait 6 to 8 weeks and wait for the transfer portal to close, I think that's tough. And so again, not knowing, just what took place there, and why we waited so long. But hopefully in the future, for situations like this, rules need to be put in play so you can, protect your rosters. But again, I just feel really fortunate. I'm a strong believer everything happens for the right reasons. And the 2 that we've added into the fold with Maria and Nicole have been phenomenal additions for us.
You've clearly really, I think, prioritized size in this next couple of recruiting cycles we've seen. You brought in more wing size, in the offseason with Yarden. How much of a focus was that for you? Because it's been something that you've talked a lot about, is rebounding and getting away kind of from having a traditional 5. It's felt like the past couple seasons. Is that a focus for your program that you're kind of prioritizing moving forward, or is it just how the recruiting cycles have shooken out?
Yeah, a lot, you are at the mercy of where those different cycles are at. But I know for us, if we want to be able to run, we have to be able to rebound, and so that size is impactful, to be able to have some of that dominance on the glass. So when it's available, you've got to be able to go take that, so you can run your system that you want to be able to have.
It's been a little bit since you guys, by program standards, it's been a little bit since you guys won a Big Ten title. It's obviously a tough conference this year, but without Juju Watkins at USC, you guys are right at the top of the fold. What gives you the most confidence? You've seen this league so many years. Like, what about this team do you think is the main reason why you could win a conference title? And then what do you think, I know it's early, obviously, that you need to really see in those kind of off non-conference and early conference games to convince yourself, like, hey, this is a championship contender?
The league is really, really tough. You've got 18 teams now, and you stretch all the way to the West Coast. So I don't know that in any season I can pinpoint to a non-conference to be like, oh, this is a championship team. And we're going to win it all. I think those are always our goals, and I think we've put the right pieces and players to give ourselves an opportunity to be in that position. But a lot of things got to unfold in the right way, and that's in your home games, your road games, staying healthy. We were rolling last year in the non-conference, and then our biggest stretch of games in January, we had back-to-back injuries between Bree McDaniel and Cheyenne Sellers that impacted us significantly. So you just all you can do is our standard is our standard. We know what it takes to get there. We know how to coach to prepare them, and the rest your team has to figure out between their chemistry as well as just being able to stay healthy.
You mentioned her. What's Bree McDaniel's timeline right now?
Really day to day. I mean, she had surgery late January, so typically ACL's full recovery is a year, and can be anywhere from 9 to 10 months to a year. But she's right now shooting and in drills, but nothing with contact. So you've just got to be able to really evaluate and be smart with her return to play.
Obviously that's you'll see what kind of happens there with her. One thing that also happened in the offseason was losing one of the assistant coaches, Karen Blair. What was kind of the reaction to that? Did you know that she was looking for a head coaching job? And then what do you think it's going to be on the sidelines like? What's it going to be like on the sidelines without her?
Yeah. Karen's, continue, our program has always put her in position. I think whenever your program is successful, your assistants are always going to have those opportunities. And Karen has been up for numerous head coaching positions in the last 3 years. This one made sense. There was a direct line from the athletic director at the time, Jay Batts, who had worked at Maryland and VCU ties. So she was a front runner all the way, and to really be able to get your first head coaching position in the ACC. I mean, Karen has long overdue for a head job, and has paid her dues in the amount of years. So really, really happy for her, and I know she's going to build great things there. And then for us, we were really fortunate to be able to grab Carly Coons as the Samford head coach. And for us, in the two scrimmages we've already had, she's an offensive, guru, and I love the fact, like, I feel like we have really been able to add another head coach on our staff. So I'm really looking forward to this time that we're going to get to spend together.
Brenda, who's a player that you think fans should kind of shift their expectations on, or is flying under the radar in your eyes that you think is primed for a big year so far that you've seen this offseason?
I think fans are really going to enjoy Lucci. I mean, I don't know if she's flying under the radar, but she's someone with like a high motor. Issy, is also someone who has been waiting a long time. When you talk about just so, they don't know, her game, and as she has sat out for a year, and that inside post presence that she's able to give. And probably the biggest surprise has been, we've had a year with Issy, so we know what she can do. Our fans don't. But biggest surprise has been probably Maria. She's come in and having the ability initially to speak the language, to see in the past 2 months just her development verbally to the language, as well as just her game. I mean, she's going to have an immediate impact on us, and down low in that post position. She just has a feel for the game that you don't need to speak English to understand how she plays. And she has a really high IQ. She's picked up our offense, our defense very, very quickly compared to, your normal freshmen when they're coming in for the first time learning your system. She has just accelerated everything at a really high rate.
All right. Well, we're going to give you some superlatives here for the preseason, so this might be tough to answer. I do want to say, by the way, going to get Duke and Indiana transfers, fans were very happy about that. Picking from Maryland rivals. So to kind of start the season off, just going to give you some rapid fire questions. I just kind of want you to give us the first thing that comes to mind. For one, who's the best shooter that you've seen so far on this team? You brought in a couple of good ones. Who stood out to you from behind the arc?
Yeah, Yarden for sure. I mean, she's on top of what we already have with KK and Sailor, and but Yarden, spends a ton of time in the
I
gym.
think that was expected. Your favorite thing about the new performance center?
People would probably laugh. I like the ice bath. It's probably the worst thing for the players, but I have to say I enjoy using them. But I think what I cherish the most is just seeing how much time the players are spending in there. And I'd probably put ahead of the ice bath my office. It feels like just a second home to me. I don't really have that kind of time. I did go down the rabbit hole to take in 10 minutes to understand what they were even watching. And after that 10 minutes, I was pretty good. I knew what they were up to. And then I don't have that kind of time commitment that I could put forth.
Yeah. What's your favorite recruiting trip you've gotten to do this cycle? You're bringing in a lot of these international players, so we're just wondering: has Brenda been to like Croatia? You gone to Greece? Like, where have you? Where's the coolest place you've gone now for a trip, even if it's in the U.S. still?
No, this past summer I was able to go with Leia. She was playing with her senior national team. I went to Bologna, Italy. So, just that opportunity to go over there. I love going overseas. As many windows and opportunities I can get, I'm going to do. So it was great to be able to get out there and support her.
Who do you think will this team's leading scorer be? I mean, Kayleen obviously coming back is the obvious answer, but would your pick be her again, or do you think there's another candidate that could emerge?
I would I don't know that I would predict. This team is a lot. I think you're going to see a different score every night in terms of a high score. I think you're going to see 3 to 4 to 5 players every night average in double figures, and I think that's going to go back and forth depending on what a matchup looks like in games. So, and I think that's the beauty of a championship team, that you're not going to rely solely on one player to be kind of shouldering that load. So, I think we have a lot of great options. I mean, Aluchi Okanawa in our first two scrimmages has been our leading scorer. And if you would have told me going in, I wouldn't have predicted that. And so she's been really, really consistent. And I think you're going to see that ebb and flow. I think you're going to see a lot of freshmen play in this year that are going to also have a big impact.
Do you think there's going to be any new Brenda recruiting memes that come out of this season? Are we going to get a new Twitter meme maybe?
Sam, I mean, you might have to be in charge of that. It's kind of it kind of unfolds as, a recent one. The players have, kind of taken on this theme of Brenda's baddies. So you have to, I don't know where all that came about, but, different things kind of take upon themselves.
Appreciate it, and we'll look forward to watching the season.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
We watched a couple of exhibitions now, watched one, was able to scout stat broadcasts for the other, and we have some takeaways from those and some previews for the Terps season. We're going to get right into our kind of official comprehensive look at the Lady Terps and see what we kind of think about the squad this year. So just to break down, Brendan, take us through what happened really quickly with last year's team, just so we have some context.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Last year, start of the season, looked like one of the best teams in the country. They had that USC game where they almost knocked off a top team at home in January, and then they started having issues with injuries. Bree McDaniel went down out for the whole season. Sayla Poffenbarger missed a good amount of games in conference play. They had a shakier start to the end of the season, still had that big win over Ohio State. Sarah Tabiasso hit a game winner. Then they go into the Big Ten tournament. They lose to Michigan. They get blown out by Michigan. They go to the NCAA tournament. They turn the page. They get a game at home. They win a round of 32. Unbelievable game against Alabama, an overtime game. Then they play South Carolina, the runner-ups, to a 4-point loss, an unbelievable game. And, a game that Maryland nearly won to make it to the Elite Eight, to beat what at the time looked like the best team in the country. That's how the season ended last year. They were a little banged up, and then they turn the page and they come in to 2025. A year last year, they had a very solid roster, ranked as one of the best teams in the country. and then they kind of fell off, like I said. I think this year it's a pretty similar story. They have a very solid roster. They're going to win a lot of their games to start the year, and then Brenda Frese said it, can they stay healthy? Mike and Sam, break down what happened to the roster between the end of that South Carolina game till now.
Yeah, so two really high portal transfer additions from Brenda Frese. There could have been three, but Gracie Merkel, you heard in that interview, Penn State transfer went back to the Nittany Lions. But Terps fans will take solace in the fact that they got two starting level players in Yarden Garzone, Indiana transfer, who was entered as one of the best shooters in the country, and Aluchi Okinawa, who we had on the podcast late in the year last year. She's a Duke transfer, and I'm really, really high on both of these players. I think that they're going to have really successful seasons. Yarden is in the Big Ten. She's played, over 100 games in the conference. Has a ton of experience. She scored over 1,000 points at Indiana, holds their career 3-point record. Was an All Big Ten second teamer twice, and made the All Big Ten freshman year. She led the Big Ten in 3-point percentage at 42% last season, averaging over 14 points a game with 5 rebounds. I just think the fit is perfect. You look at kind of what she'll do for this offense. She'll provide a ton of spacing in the front court, can kind of guard 3 through 4. So you have that sort of wing versatility with her and Sailor Poffenbarger. I almost think of her as just like a souped up version of Sailor in a way. Both are kind of those stretch fours who can shoot. And I think that she's going to add a ton of flexibility to what Brenda wants to do offensively. She'll be deadly in transition as a shooter. And then Aluchi, I think, is primed for a huge season. She's somebody who came in as a really impressive player with the Blue Devils last year, dominated in the ACC tournament. She's a really, really, really good defender, brings a lot of on-ball experience, which I think will help. And I think the shot is better than the percentages say. You watch her, she has a good form. Her free throw numbers suggest that I think she'll be able to build out her range as her time goes on. And I think she's going to start the year, and then whether she moves to the bench when Bree McDaniel comes back or not, she's going to play a very tangible role for this team. So two really high-level additions. Mike, do you want to hit on the freshmen really quick and just some of the players that Maryland lost last season?
Yeah, so I think the biggest loss is going to be Shy Sellers right off the bat. It's going to be hard to replace a Shy Sellers from your roster. They're also losing Emily Fisher, who made minimal contributions during her time in College Park. You also lose Allie Quebec, who transferred out. But honestly, I think when you look at who they brought in, yes, like I said, it's going to be hard to replace Shy Sellers. I think they did a good job, and I think this roster is upgraded from last year. When you think about the scoring that Aluchi is going to bring, you think about the scoring and the shooting that Yarden's going to bring. And then you think about when Bree McDaniel comes back around mid-season, sometime in the second half of the year, I would think that this roster is a little bit of an upgrade from last year. And then, they're bringing in a bunch of freshmen this year under Brenda Frese. There is no guarantee that they're actually going to get playing time. There's also a couple redshirt freshmen who didn't play as much last year, such as Kendall Walker. But I think the biggest freshman on Terps fans' minds is Addie Mack, a freshman guard from Minnesota. She can score. She was number 2 on Minnesota's all-time scoring list in high school. She scored over 4,500 points, averaged 34 a game as a senior. So she can definitely score. I think if you're pinpointing one freshman who can make meaningful contributions this year, it'll be her. But like I said, you don't know if a Brenda Free squad, if they're actually going to get time.
Yeah, I'll touch on some other people they lost. They obviously lost Sarah Tabiasu, who I mentioned from that Ohio State game. I think a underrated loss is Christina Dulce. When you look at this team right now, she was able to guard the big and also be a shot blocker. I think that's the biggest weakness as we start to talk about what this team is going to actually look like on the floor. I think the biggest weakness on this team is it's not going to necessarily be size, but it's going to be the ability to have a shot blocker and a presence.
Sure.
Rim protection route. Yeah. I just think, we're going to talk about obviously losing Gracie Merkel. That would have helped, but still losing Allie and losing Christina is going to be tough. But on the offensive side, not necessarily, because they're going to space the floor and they want everybody on the floor to be able to shoot. So on the offensive side, they're going to definitely have that with Sailor and Yarden. But when you go to the defensive side, that is an area where they're playing one of the bigger bigs, or if they're playing just someone who can drive, not going to have that presence. And then the other thing that they did this past offseason was we obviously talked about it with her in an interview, but brought in players from overseas who I just don't know how much of an impact they're really going to make. You have Mario Boyko, who one of those people who was a later addition in the transfer portal. People like that, it's hard to say, once they got brought in, how much of an impact they're going to make. Obviously, coming from the European game, but they'll be interesting to watch as well.
Yeah. Speaking of players that we have, let's break down potential rotation. We've kind of seen early on in the exhibition some hints about what this team could be, but let's kind of talk about what we think the opening day rotation will be. And we know that this is going to change over time. Brenda typically runs in the non-con a bigger rotation, but if we had to kind of boil it down to 8 or 9 players that you see really playing this year, that's assuming everybody is healthy. So when Bree McDaniel comes back, that's a big stipulation, obviously. The point guard and center position are the two main questions to me. I think you really can bank in 3 starters with Okinawa, Garzone, and Saylor and Kayleen Schmeichel. After that, I think it gets a little confusing. I think that Saylor Poffenbarger is going to play a lot of minutes, so you can factor her into the rotation, definitely. I think that you're going to have to get minutes from some sort of backcourt young player. Mike mentioned Mac. I think Kendall Walker could potentially play a big role. Mac took 12 shots in the game against NC State, so definitely not afraid to be aggressive. I would probably pencil her in above Walker just from looking at kind of the early signs, but that could be a battle that we see throughout the season. And then I think that you're going to have to get some front court minutes. I don't know if that's from Ozzy Mamoto or if that's from Brianna Williams, but there's going to have to be some sort of front court play that you're getting. And then obviously some other names to mention. Muir McLean, she played a decent role in last year's team. I don't know how much of a spot she's going to have. Her position of like the wing 2 through 4 is just loaded. So I don't, it's going to be tough for her to find playing time, but definitely could scratch something out. Ava McKenney, we've known as kind of a potential player for a little bit now. And then Wilson, of course, as Mike mentioned. So I would say those kind of top 8 of Poffenbarger, Okinawa, Garzone, I'm blanking on McDaniel, Schmeichel, Mac, and then you kind of have to fill in the rest, the final 2 with whoever's playing best would be my guess. I don't know if there's any names that you guys think I missed.
It's almost easier to look at this roster and look at who we think won't play. This roster is so interesting at the moment because seriously, there's about 12 people who I could see getting serious minutes in the early season plan, and they're going to have to just figure out their rotation. It's always tough when you look at teams that go very deep. You don't necessarily need that many people. Obviously, injuries were a huge factor for them last year, and having a deep roster is always a safety net for that. But there's something to be said for having 8 great players instead of having 3 very good ones, and then, or like 3, first team caliber players, and then having players who can play meaningful minutes, but maybe not necessarily the reason you're winning a national championship. The one player I really have no idea how much he's going to play, Sam just mentioned it, is Muir McLean, one of the captains on this team, and obviously had an increased role last year after some injuries. Her defensive skills are one of the strongest in the team, I'd probably say. So I would expect her to get a lot of minutes early in the year because of that. And then offensively, you just really don't know how much you're going to get. But because how much scoring this team has, as long as she can distribute, like if she can play well enough defense, I could actually see her being that 6th or 7th man on this roster. Just because from a defensive perspective, they're going to need that, especially before Bree comes back.
Yeah. Before we get into a game I want to play, I want to ask you both, what do you think the biggest strength and weakness from this team will be? Mike, what do you think the team's kind of top strengths are looking at this roster?
I think you got to say just scoring in general. You look at this roster, I think there's a lot of scorers, whether that's Kayleen Schmeichel, whether that's Yarden Garzone, whether that's Alucci, whether that's Bree when she comes back, whether that's going to be off the bench or starting for them. I think there's a lot of scoring potential, which is what we've kind of seen in Brenda Frese's teams recently. Defensively, I think that's where the questions show up. And like you guys mentioned, that Gracie Merkel loss. just picturing this team with Merkel down low, this is a hard team to beat in the Big Ten, and I can see the vision that Frese and her staff had for the roster when they got Merkel, and I think again that's the one hole that's left.
It's such a tough thing. Obviously, we talked about it on the interview. Like, you lose a player in the after the transfer portal closes. What do you do? Really, she went out and got players from overseas, which is a very good way to attack that problem. Maryland right now ranked 10th in the AP poll preseason. I think if they have Gracie Merkel, they're probably in the top 5. I honestly still think the roster of this team, if everybody plays to their ceilings or not even, this team has a legitimate shot to make a run to the Final Four because of the strength of the scoring of their roster. And Mike obviously mentioned that's the biggest strength. I would say the strength compared to other years that we've seen Brenda Frese team is probably just the 3-point shooting. Not a great 3-point shooting team last year. I think she made serious efforts to improve that. And when you have someone like Yarden Garzon who can shoot at above a 40% clip,
they were a pretty good 3-point shooting team. They shot at 36% from the floor, which was the 23rd best in the country.
I think if you look at attempts, that was more. I was looking at that.
Yeah.
They weren't a team that relied.
No, 100%. 265th in 3-point attempts. Good point.
Yeah, so they could shoot it well, but it wasn't a team that relied on it. They got to the basket a lot. It wasn't a
focus of the offense for sure.
No. Except for the Duke game. They made like every 3 in the game.
They did, yeah.
But I think they're going to shoot a lot more threes this year. And that's why you get the best 3-point shooter probably in the country, or at least in the conference with Yarden Garzon. And so if she's knocking down shots, some of the games I watched of her last year, if she's knocking down shots, I mean, any team that is hitting 3-pointers at 40%, or any player that's hitting 3-pointers at 40% or better, if they get hot in a game, I mean, instantly that can flip a loss to a win right there.
I mean, just think of on the perimeter, you could have at your wing positions, you could have Schmeichel, Poffenbarger, and Garzon. That's 3 pretty high level shooters. If Saylor gets back to shooting it kind of the way we saw her in Arkansas, she had a slightly down year from beyond the arc last season, but I do think there's a lot of potential with that team. I mean, there's going to be chances for them to really space the floor. I think the biggest weakness, you guys have mentioned it, rim protection. I don't know how good this interior defense is going to be. Brenda's pretty consistently one of the best defensive coaches in the country. Last year's defense was really good, but they committed a ton of fouls, 11th in the country. And I think a lot of that is because they are an aggressive pressing style defense, but also because they sent teams to the line a lot because it was hard to get stops down low. And I don't think that this is a team that's going to struggle with rebounding per se, because they have a lot of good rebounding wings and forwards. But I just don't know if they're going to be able to stop the elite level post players / defend the rim at the level that I think other Brenda teams have. So those are kind of the strengths and weaknesses I would look at. Really, let's kind of go through on I have some over-unders for you guys to kind of break it down for me, and then just some quick questions. So we're going to hit on these, and you guys can kind of give me a breakdown of what you think. So let's make this our little rapid fire. We're going to say Talking with Terps. Shout out Terp Talk on Twitter. Let's get this thing going. So first off, Brendan said, you kind of touched on my first question. Is Maryland going to shoot over or under 36% from 3 this season? That was the number last year. They added some proven shooters. Let's give me an over-under on 3, 2, 1. Over.
Under. I'll say under just because I think they're going to shoot a lot more threes and they're going to be more reliant on it. Obviously, like I said, they have Yarden Garzon who's probably going to shoot way above that. But I think as a team, they'll probably take a lot more, and so their percentage will be a little bit lower, but they'll make more per game.
That's a good point, Brendan. This team last season had 4 double-digit scores, 2 that slightly missed it with Allie and Saylor. I'm going to set the line at 5 this season. Do you think there are more or less than 5 double-digit scorers on this team's roster? Ready?
You said last year there was 2.
Last year there was 4.
4.
And there were 2 that slightly missed it, so they nearly had 6.
Yeah, they nearly had 6. All right, 3, 2, 1. Over. Yeah. Mike, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, we just kind of mentioned it there. There's just a plethora of scorers on this roster between Garzon, Poffenbarger, Schmeichel. Maybe Addie Mack can make that sort of contribution her freshman year too. I could go down the roster, but it just feels like that's going to be the priority for this team, just running and scoring. So
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty easy one.
I think it's going to be very by committee, like we saw last year. That
Yeah.
You're not going to know who the leading scorer is. You could realistically look at this roster and say there's probably 8 or 9 people that could put up 30 points in a game. How they're going to distribute the ball is yet to be seen, but like I think there'll be a lot. The distribution of how they score and will depend a lot on their defensive matchups.
Definitely. Last year's team had 9 players, in Big Ten play that played 10 or more minutes. Going to set that same line. 9 players in double-digit minutes this season. You guys think that the Terps will go over the line at 9.5, so they'd have to have 10 to make that. Do you think that Brenda plays 10 players at least 10 minutes this season? We've been talking about depth. Now it's time to put it to the test. Over, under, 3, 2, 1.
Under. Wow.
So see, I'll take this one. I think that this team has a lot of depth, but I think depth is somewhat overrated in college basketball. Not a ton of minutes to be had, a lot of stoppages. I think Brenda probably regrets a little bit playing Emily Fisher as much as she did last season. I would not expect there to be 10 players who see the floor that much. Here's a fun one. So Maryland last year had 1 road loss. Kind of a weird quirk. They were better on the road than they were at home. This year's road schedule, also not too tough, but definitely a little harder. Not including games in Puerto Rico against Kentucky. Their road schedule includes Minnesota, Illinois, Rutgers, USC, UCLA, Michigan State, Ohio State, and Michigan. So way, way tougher this year. That's 4 ranked teams. I'm going to set the line as the Terps Road Warriors. Do we think that they have more or less than 2.5 road losses this season? All right, ready? 3, 2, 1.
Under.
I'll go over. I think that this team is going to be good. I worry about those West Coast trips. I think UCLA kind of presents a ton of matchup problems for Maryland. I think that Michigan has given them some trouble in recent years. And then I can just see them dropping one more of the Michigan State, USC, or Kentucky game.
The Kentucky game is not in.
That's true. We didn't count the Kentucky game.
Defrauding his own question.
Ohio State, one of those kind of teams. I could see them losing to in the Big Ten.
Yeah, Ohio State's always tough. I think you got to go out west. This is obviously looking at January now, but split USC, UCLA. And I honestly don't see them dropping. If you continue the trend from last year, they probably either drop Michigan or Michigan State, but I think they're going to be very solid on the road again. I think this team's going to be very solid overall, actually.
Yeah. Well, we're almost to the record predictions, but really quick.
I got one thing to add.
Okay.
Do we think that Yarden Garzone is going to set the season 3-pointers made record this year? So she had
single season for Maryland.
She might make more threes than it took in the time for you to spit that stat out.
So she shot 88 threes She made 88 threes last year for Indiana. The record right now is 95 in a season.
So she's making more than 95.
Who set the record? It was like 10 years ago?
It was in the 2018-19 season.
No,
Taylor.
It would have been Taylor Mikesell. Yeah.
I think she's a terrific Terp back in the day. I can't lie. That's why I asked.
Transferred to Ohio State.
Good stat pull there.
So 95 threes, Mike?
Yeah, 95.
Okay. How do you know that wasn't a question I was going to ask?
Because it was a good question.
Are we taking? Are we doing a line here?
95.
Yeah, 95. Is she getting 95?
Yeah, I take the under.
Yeah.
What do you think? I think
the under too. I think there's too many shots to be had on this team. Basically with Indiana, Mackenzie Holmes drew so much attention and then would kick it out to Garzone, and that was kind of their shot diet, was like Holmes finishes and Garzone threes. Maryland just has a wide wide amount of scoring that they can kind of present.
Yeah.
She'll definitely take that many, so it's a percentage game at that point, Mike.
Yeah. I'll go under 2 because she took 216 last year, and Sarah Tabiasu took the most on the team last year with 149.
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a fun hypothetical to think about.
I like that one, Mike.
I mean, she'll take more than Tabiasu took last year.
Yeah.
So.
I like that one. This is a good question, I think, because one of the things that Maryland actually struggled with last year, Brendan mentioned the 3-point shooting, but turnovers. They turn the ball over a decent amount. This year's team doesn't have a true point guard. I'm just kind of curious, do you guys think that they're going to turn it over? Last year was 16. Don't think it'll be that bad, but 14 and a half turnovers a game. So are they committing kind of that number that you look at of like 15 turnovers? Anything more than that is kind of, do you think that they're going to cough it up that many times? Ready? 3, 2, 1. Over.
Under.
Oh, okay. I think no point guard, that scares me. At least that no established point guard right now.
Yeah, I think Leah Bartolome is probably going to play a lot of point guard. I mean, that's obviously yet to be seen. I think a lot of the turnovers last year were from a style of play we won't see. A lot of the turnovers last year were from them driving into the paint or closer to the baseline and then losing the ball. Cheyenne Sellers, as great as she was for Maryland, did that pretty often and caused other players to be in positions where they'd lose the ball like that. I don't think that's really going to be the style of play we see with them this year. And so I think it'll just lead to fewer turnovers.
Yeah, fair point. All right, last question. This team last season, obviously, good year. Sweet 16 finish. We're going to start with the regular season, though. 25-8 last year, 13-5 in conference. They're the preseason number 10 team, so I figured I had to bump that line up a little bit. I'm going to set it at 14.5 for conference wins, Big Ten wins, and then overall record, I'm going to go at 26.5. So on those two, conference, Big Ten, where are you at with this team? On 3, we'll start with conference records. Remember, 14.5. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Over.
Over. Mike, what do you got?
Under.
Explain yourself.
There's just a lot of ranked games on this conference schedule. You got USC, UCLA, Iowa, Michigan State, Michigan. That's 5 ranked games.
Plus Kentucky.
You're typically going to drop a couple unranked games too that you shouldn't when conference play starts. Yeah.
All right. Overall record at 26.5. That would mean they would go 27-7 for the under and 26-7 and then 27-6. Let's get this going. Ready? 3, 2, 1. I'm going to stay slightly under. I think they lose to Kentucky. That's my kind of stipulation. Brendan, you're pretty high on them.
Yeah, I just don't see them losing an out-of-conference game. If you look at their at-home conference schedule, I mean, stop me when you hear a game that they're going to lose. Loyola, UMBC, Georgetown, Towson, Princeton, Bethune-Cookman, George Mason, Mount St. Mary's, Delaware State, Central Connecticut State. Those are all wins. I think they win both the games in Puerto Rico. And then that's just what happens in conference play. And based on my conference play prediction, just numbers-wise, I mean, seriously, this team might not lose a game until January 15th. So this team could peak at the 3rd in the country, kind of like they did last year, where they had a very good start. They took a while to lose, and they had a very high ranking. I think we're going to see a very similar thing. I asked Brenda about it, just the scheduling. And she said the schedule last year was too hard. I agree. Playing that random Texas game in the middle of the season was very demoralizing. This is a much smarter schedule. Let the team gel. I think the roster, I have no reason to believe they're not gonna. I have no reason to believe they're not going to be a very good team, and I really don't see them losing a game until January. So that's my logic there.
Fair point. This team, we know the postseason success has been there most of the time, but they haven't made a Final Four in a while. I'm going to set the line as not a Final Four, but simple yes or no question. Does Maryland make it back to the Elite Eight? I think that would be a successful year by most points. We'll go on 3, 2, 1. Yes.
No.
So Brendan predicting a strong regular season, a weak postseason. Really quick, I think this team is good. I think they're going to get a good seed, and I think Brenda's and this team is fitted for March. I like the 3-point shooting. I like the depth. I'm a little concerned about the lack of true experience at the point guard and center position, but I trust Frese to kind of figure it out. I think the Terps get back to the Elite Eight and fall in that round. Brendan, how come you are not loving it?
Yeah, no, it's super fair. I would be surprised if they don't make the Sweet 16. I think that's
Yeah.
pretty much what would be expected. The tournament's tough, and they obviously played well in the tournament last year. They had a little bit more tournament depth. That's just kind of where I see it. Not a ton of experience in the tournament necessarily. This team's going to be solid, but there's a ton of teams they could run into in the tournament that I could see them losing to in the Sweet 16 once they have to get on the road. But I think I think they'll make a Sweet 16 for sure.
Definitely. Well, that was a fun one. Long women's basketball preview, but we're really excited for the Terps to kick it off here pretty soon. Kicking it off legitimately is the football team. And I don't know if people are as excited about this weekend. Primetime game, kind of, 3:30 for CBS against Indiana, a top 5 team in the country. It would be Maryland's first chance to knock off a top 5 team since they did it against Florida State oh so long ago. I don't really see that in the cards. Mike, let's give a breakdown of what we're looking at for the Terps here against the Hoosiers and the Fighting Roman Hembees and Kellen Wyatts.
Yeah, I mean, let's be real here, number one. I don't think there's a single Terp fan who believes in Maryland has a shot to win this game. Last week, Maryland loses UCLA 20-17. Close game, a defensive battle. And then the next week, Indiana beats UCLA 56-6. I think that kind of summarizes how good Indiana is, the type of caliber of team that's coming to College Park this weekend. It'll be a good crowd. It's homecoming weekend. You have the number 2 team in the country coming to College Park. I don't see a path of how Maryland wins this game. Do you guys see any sort of path Maryland wins this, or in your eyes is a foregone conclusion? Next week we'll be talking about on the pod how Maryland has lost 4 straight games. It is now 500 after starting 4-0.
Yeah. So I don't think that Maryland is going to win this game. I don't. And I think you'd be crazy to argue otherwise. I do think that there is a slight chance for them to keep it close. So Indiana's played a decent sample size now, and I think we can kind of look at 3 games as what Maryland should be looking at: the Iowa game, the Oregon game, and the Michigan State game. So those 3 kind of tell me three different things. I don't think Indiana is a great running team on offense. They don't typically rush it a ton. They're not going to pound the ball on the ground, and we've seen when Maryland can't stop the run, they've struggled defensively because their secondary has been able to hold up. So I think you're going to be able to kind of keep a light box and make their ground game beat you, because you don't want Francisco Mendoza to tear you up. That's kind of, if that happens, the game's over. The next thing I think you can look at is teams have gotten yards on Indiana's defense. I mean, Michigan State lost 38-13, which you're probably looking at and being like, what the hell are you talking about, Sam? Like, they have no chance. Well, the Spartans threw for 293 passing yards and actually got 367 yards in general. Iowa, who I know they have an improved passing attack, but it's still Iowa, they threw for almost 200 yards. And then Oregon, who's one of the best teams in the country, they also had a decent game through the air, 186 yards. Obviously not as good as the other 2. Dante Moore struggled at points, throwing 2 picks. But that's kind of the path I see. You have to not turn the ball over, drive the ball down the field, and then Maryland has to be aggressive in red zone situations and when they have chances. You're going to have to go for it on 4th and 2, 4th and 3, 4th and 4. You're going to have to you can't kick field goals in this game, really. That's kind of the only path I see to keeping this game close. And then in the 4th quarter, if you're close with the number 2 team in the country at home, crazier things have happened. That's kind of just my path of optimism, I guess. But realistically, no, they're not winning this game.
Yeah, I agree. They're going to have to make them, like you said, the secondary is going to have to play great for Maryland. Having Jalen Husky out for the first half is not great. But, I mean, there's a couple things to look at. They haven't, Indiana, given who they played, haven't looked great on the road. Average margin of victory is 7.5 points. They only played 2 games on the road. At home, their average margin of victory is 43.5. So they haven't looked as strong. I mean, that Iowa game, a couple plays go Iowa's way. Iowa wins that game.
You always have known the House of Horrors as Memorial Stadium in Bloomington.
I think that the couple things that give you confidence are that Maryland's been very competitive in every game they played. Washington and Nebraska aren't incredible, but they're some of the better teams, or middling teams in the Big Ten. Obviously, UCLA got dismantled by Indiana this weekend. I think everybody knew that was coming. Can Maryland keep it close? Absolutely, but the way Indiana has just dominated teams, I don't think Maryland will win this game. I leave you with this very simple question or thought. Maryland did not play a game last week. That's all I really need to know. Off the bye week.
Yeah, I was waiting for someone to
pretty
mention,
much cooked.
Loxley's now 0-10 after the bye week.
1-9 against the spread. Not only do they lose those games, they get blown out. It's
not good. And if they lose, it's like, and if they lose bad, it's gonna reach a tenor that I don't think has been many. I mean, shit, LSU's firing their coach. You got some of the Florida's firing their coach. The conversations are gonna be interesting if they get.
The biggest horror would be to be winning at some point during the fourth quarter and lose the game. That I don't think people are ready for. I think people would probably rather get blown out than
maybe
be up by 14 in the fourth quarter and Indiana comes back. I mean that.
Yeah, that would.
Goalposts will be taking places for different reasons, maybe.
Let me give you guys a hypothetical real quick, because I think this is how the season is starting to shape up. They're going to play Indiana, Illinois, and Michigan. They have a game next week against Rutgers. So if they win the Rutgers game and they lose to those three opponents I just mentioned, they're going to be going into the final week of the season against Michigan State at Ford Field with a chance to make a bowl game.
Ford Field is such a prayer for Maryland. Oh my God. Seriously, they had to go in a cold.
If they win that game, though, and they go to a bowl game, even if they lose and then finish the year 6-7, would you call that a success? If they beat Michigan State,
nice.
They beat Michigan State and make a bowl game, is that a success? No.
I think that expectations have changed. I think you could a successful season in terms of record. I think you could call it a successful season because you have a building block in the league, Washington. That's kind of the give and take, I think.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting scenario, and
if they finish 7-6 or 7-5 in the regular season with a win over Indiana or Michigan, you're
definitely calling that a success.
That's
it's just crazy. The optics just off one game are so.
The optics are crazy. I mean, if Maryland beats Indiana, the optics completely changed because it's a program-defining win.
Yep,
it's just one that Maryland hasn't had in so long.
We got into the lunatic part of the episode.
We would have called the Washington game a program-defining win too. That's how much our expectations are so low for this.
You're starving for a win. Literally, it's a good point.
I think I called the Wisconsin game a program-defining win.
The season when Michigan State, when 3-8 Michigan State and 5-6 Maryland walk in. This is the monumental game for the Mike Locksley test.
It's the classic thing of
going to be the conversation.
It's the classic thing of he's barely beat a team in his time here that finishes over 500. I know I talked about this last year, but Maryland very rarely beats teams in the Big Ten or even in general that have finished the season with a better than 500 record, and very rarely with 8 wins. I'd have to check if that's happened. So and 8 wins with no losses? Come on.
Let's move on to it.
Let's talk soccer.
Let's move on to a team that actually beat Indiana. Men's soccer, big
well
win.
Said.
Huge game to kind of maintain pace with Washington, who now comes to town this Friday for a huge game. We're going to kind of split this up. We're going to have to go fast just because we had a long preview. Brendan, can you kind of in a minute or so break down what happened in the Indiana game, and then we'll preview Washington, who's coming in on Halloween for a big Ludwig matchup?
Yeah, Indiana game. Maryland took advantage of their chances, had 7 total shots on goal. The first goal went right through the hands of the Indiana goalkeeper in the first 15 minutes, and that kind of really ignited Maryland's offense. Sadal Masreka had a great goal where he scored it around the goalkeeper and put it in the back left of the net. Indiana fought back. They scored 2 goals, but it was 2-0, then it was 2-1, then it was 3-1, then it was 3-2. So Maryland for the second half, it was kind of one of those you can't let in another goal, but they felt like they were going to win the game for most of that second half. Just had to close it out, but great third goal for the Terps, and then they looked very solid defensively. Lauren Mack had a good save that kept the game out of distance or out of reach rather, for Indiana. At the end of the day, this team might not be ranked the number one team in the country this week or at the end of the season, but I can tell you that nobody wants to come into Ludwig and play the Terps just the way they played at home, just the way they played the whole season. You see Maryland on your schedule right now, and you are a bit fearful. The one thing that probably maybe applies to you the least is Washington. They currently sit at the top of the Big Ten table, 1 point better than Maryland. Very likely the winner of this game would be the one who wins the Big Ten regular season. Washington's looked great. Haven't dropped a game yet in Big Ten play. Very similar to Maryland, where their defense has looked great.
They have lost one game and
they lose one game. They lost no tie. They're 6-1.
They're 7-1. Yeah,
7-1. Okay.
They've won 6 straight games.
That's what it is. Okay.
I will say, interestingly, they've played 2 top 10 teams, Michigan and Denver. They lost both of those games. And I think that Maryland is a caliber of team that they haven't played so far this season. So I'm fascinated to watch what happens. Halloween should be a good atmosphere. Washington's offense, really, really good. One of the best in the Big Ten. It's kind of a weird thing because they weren't exactly great last year, a pretty middling of the pack team. We've kind of come to expect Indiana and Michigan to be really good, but Washington, traditionally hasn't been that type of team, at least in recent years. They've been that this season, and they have, a very, very good unit. So I'm excited to watch what'll happen. Some of the best offensive talent in the conference will be on display. So really looking forward to that. And I can't wait to see what goes down between one of the nation's best defenses in Maryland, allowing only 9 goals allowed this season, which leads the Big Ten, and then one of the nation's best offenses in Washington, who scored 38 goals. So really exciting stuff. Can't wait to see what goes down in Ludwig. Really quick, we'll hit on the other sports. Women's soccer plays Rutgers. They drawed to end the season, their first tie of the year, finishing 6-11-1 in the regular season and 2-8-1 in Big Ten. Not much to hit on. I think that this team kind of ended the year in so many places we've come to expect a finale with no real postseason implications. But Marciano's first year, graduating a lot of players. I think they were competitive at points this season. Just, it's tough to look at this season as anything but kind of a continuation of what we've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to come down to who they can get in the transfer portal and who they bring in. You mentioned it, 7 people will celebrate on senior day. I believe 3 or 4 of them have eligibility, so we'll see if they come back. But the roster is going to be the most important factor in them having a successful season next year. So we'll see what Marciano can do. I'm a fan of him, but at the end of the day, if you're not producing results in the field, it doesn't matter. Mike, field hockey wrapped up Big Ten play. What's going on there?
Yeah, so the Terps wrapped up conference play. Last Friday, they got a win over number 17 Rutgers, which is nice to see, especially it coming in overtime, because we talked about last week the Terps struggling in those clutch moments. They're going to face Virginia on Tuesday, so this episode is going to come out. Is it going to come out after or before this game?
It'll come out after. Virginia game will be over if you're hearing this.
By the time you're listening to this...
What have we ever released on Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Yeah, so by the time you're listening to this, let's act like the Terps lost that game. I think that's probably what's going to happen. And they're going to finish on Sunday against Northeastern, and then you got the Big Ten tournament. So hopefully they avoid Northwestern and stay in their number 2 spot right now in the conference, but who knows what will happen. Overall, I would say it was kind of a disappointing year in conference play for Missy Maharg's team.
Such a classic field hockey thing to say. Finished probably 2nd or 3rd in the conference. Disappointing. They have a serious shot to win the Big Ten tournament. They look competitive against Northwestern, who they'll have to beat. They play competitive at every game. We talked about it. The defense is the biggest strength, but
I would be shocked if they won the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, I don't think they.
There's a legitimate shot they could win the Big Ten tournament.
I think, dude, Northwestern's 15-1, 7-0, and has one of the best goal margins in the country. They're going to coach.
They had a very good shot to win the Northwestern game.
Yeah. Okay. Well, just like Maryland has a very good shot to beat Indiana. Anyway,
if you were looking at the odds of those games, I think that Maryland field hockey would have a much greater chance to beat Northwestern than the football team to beat Indiana. But
yeah,
this is why you come to the podcast, guys. You can get
40 minutes, and we're an hour into this episode, and we're talking about which team has a better chance to pull up the upset.
You can get things like that. Let's move off.
Team that's probably not pulling off the upset is volleyball. Two
Here
losses
we
out
go.
west this past weekend. They get Indiana and Northwestern at home. They played 20 conference games. They've played 10. They're 1-9 in conference play halfway through. They're currently at 8-12 overall. Let's not look at the COVID season. I want you guys to guess what year was the last time they won fewer than 10 games.
Last 10 years, you said?
I said excluding the COVID year when they played 20 games total. When was the last year they won fewer than 10 games?
2018.
2004.
2008. So you had to go back a good ways there. It's possible they end up, getting 2 or 3 more wins in conference play, but it's been a disappointing
Not a
start.
great sign when you're in year 8 and you're setting program records in a bad way.
Yeah.
That's where Adam Hughes is at.
Yeah.
Let's move.
I can't believe there's a month left of this season for them, too.
Every year we get to volleyball, I'm like, wow, they played. Yeah, their last game is the 28th of October. It's like
So
they're gonna-
painful.
they're only halfway through conference play. Pretty much every other team is done.
They're gonna
Every week we
finish.
come in here talking about how the volleyball team has lost another conference game and it lasts till March. Anyway,
He is gone.
let's move off volleyball and get into our picks. Brendan, big week, huge week for B Wizzy. Give us your bets this week, Brendan. Maybe people should start tailing Brendan White.
Oh.
He's on a
I don't know.
leader
We've done 9 weeks of picks so far. I'm in the lead here.
with a pretty substantial padding, 16-11 compared to my 13-14. Michael, of course, hasn't recorded his picks.
Mike could be. I don't think Mike's doing that well. If he was doing well, he'd probably know.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. He would know.
I don't love my picks this weekend, so this is probably not the weekend to tail me, but I'll take Syracuse minus 2.5 against UNC. I bet against USC last weekend. They covered. That was my only pick that lost. I'll take Ole Miss minus 12.5 against South Carolina. South Carolina just played one of their best games of the season. They lost in a late thriller against Alabama. I think coming off that, they're going to be a bit sluggish. The Ole Miss offense has looked unbelievable. I'll take Georgia Tech minus 6.5 against NC State. A top 10 team in Georgia Tech. I like where they're headed.
Definitely. Some fun games this week. I'm going to kind of shake it up. We usually do spreads and stuff, but I love the under in the Vanderbilt-Texas game. Both defenses really good. Arch Manning got hurt last week. Give me Vanderbilt, Texas under 45. Give me Tennessee minus 3.5 against Oklahoma. I don't love Oklahoma this year, and I think Tennessee's kind of a little bit of a sleeping giant right now. And then I'll finish it out with Kennesaw State minus 9.5 against UTEP. That's a Tuesday night game, so I'm excited for that one. Give me a reason to check out my ESPN app.
All right, and I'll close it out. I'm going to take Indiana 21.5 point favorites at Syracuse Stadium. I think the Terps might get cracked here. I'm going to go Notre Dame 28.5 point favorites at Boston College, and then I'm going to go Minnesota 3.5 point favorites against Michigan State.
What just absolutely electrifying picks from Michael Big Mike House there. I mean, those are games you're definitely going to want to tune into. And you're going to want to tune into some weekday action that's Sam. So, just a lovely showing here. Let's do Terrific Terp. As you guys can tell, I was looking into the record books for volleyball, so wanted to shine a light. I know it's the women's basketball preview episode, but at this point in the episode, no one remembers that. So let's do a volleyball coach Terrific Terp and get the heck out of here. Speaking of her, this week's Terrific Terp holds the best winning percentage in Maryland women's volleyball history. Janice Kruger coached at Maryland for 20 seasons from 1988 to 2007 and had the Terps operating as one of the more successful programs in the country during her time in College Park. Her college volleyball career was at a powerhouse because she played at the University of Nebraska and was in fact a captain there. After her time there, she took a head coaching job, and stop me if you've heard of this college before, at Platt Technical Community College in Columbus, Nebraska. Then she worked at Nebraska Omaha, a Division II school. In her time at Nebraska Omaha, they were a mainstay in the NCAA tournament. Finally, after her stint there, she arrived at Maryland. In 1990, which was her third season, the Terps won the ACC regular season and postseason championship, as well as made it to the NCAA tournament. It would take until 1995 for the Terps to return to the tournament, and for the next 3 years, they made the second round every year. But most impressively, in 1996 and 97, they lost 7 combined games, finishing undefeated in conference play both of those years, and finishing 27-2 in 1997. The only losses coming that season were in the postseason, the ACC tournament, and the NCAA tournament. The Terps would not make the tournament again until 2003, when they once again started a streak of 3 straight second-round NCAA tournament appearances. 2005 was the last time the Terps made the NCAA tournament, and all their appearances in history came under Kruger. She finishes with 7 total NCAA tournament appearances and 5 ACC titles. For about a year after she finished coaching at Maryland, she was an assistant to the athletic director before joining the Side Out Foundation. Side Out is a volleyball-based foundation that raises awareness and money for breast cancer. The well-known Dig Pink program was born out of the Side Out Foundation. She's a brand ambassador and still works in the media space for volleyball, hosting a podcast for the Side Out Foundation. The only women's volleyball coach to make the NCAA tournament during her time at Maryland is this week's terrific Terp.
Kind of 2 different programs at Maryland that we look at as the volleyball team compared to the women's basketball team and just the standards that have been set. But guys, basketball is back. This is like the best time of the year for sports. Tonight, there's NBA.
Sports Equinox,
NFL,
yep.
Yeah, NFL and MLB. It's that time of the year for Terps athletics too, so we're excited to keep bringing you the best content. Sorry for the long episode, but we appreciate if any of you sickos stayed all the way. Have a great rest of your night, and keep tuning in to Under the Shell.
Guess what? You've got Under the Shell podcast. Nobody does it better.